What's going on, you guys? Cameron here with another video. So today we're going to not only be talking about the books that I have read that have really impacted my life and the choices that I have made as far as decision making in business and in software and which softwares to use and solving business issues that a lot of businesses have that they want to solve, and how to not only solve the issues but make it so that it's very easy to use to solve those problems. So this is kind of like a book review slash how I got started in Filemaker and how I use some of this information in my workflow up to getting to building a business and getting my first client and making that first sale. So the first book here on the top, this is the first book I really ever read for Filemaker. It's not the first software book that I read, but for the Filemaker perspective, this is the first book I read cover to cover. I read it on a family vacation, to be honest. You can see this is Filemaker Pro 2014, the Filemaker Pro 14. This book was awesome. It really goes in depth on how to do stuff and how to like just the basic stuff in Filemaker and what Filemaker 14 was back then. Back then, I mean, Filemaker was in that two-stage version of Filemaker Pro and then Filemaker Pro Advanced, and I always wanted Filemaker Pro Advanced, but I never was able to afford it because it was a little bit extra money. To be honest, I don't remember how much more it was, but I started with Filemaker Pro, developed in that, made some really cool applications for that for my parents' businesses. So the only reason why I got into Filemaker is because my parents actually, they had a personal developer for Microsoft Access, and my parents had this tractor business, and they have this business to where they work with the city, but they also work with private clients, and they needed a way to be customized for managing photos, creating work orders, invoices, and so forth. And I'm talking about back in like the early 2000s when there was no SaaS business model, there was no apps on a phone. It was basically just a computer and whatever you were able to make with the computer. Luckily for my dad, he had someone that knew how to make stuff with the computer, and they used Microsoft Access for that. The sad part about the story here is that their developer, Steve Easterling, actually passed away in 2005. So from 2005 up until about 2013-14, I was working in the family business, and I did realize that they were having so many struggles with software. I was trying to learn and help them fix their issues as far as software, because I dabbled with computers, but I wasn't an expert yet. I was more of a gaming nerd, and I like playing with Xbox and Xbox games and stuff like that. But I had dabbled in on the computer as far as making websites and coding like Arduino boards and stuff like that. So at first I actually learned more about Access more than anything. And then my dad was like, well, if you learn that, can we do this? Can we do that? Can we do this? Can we do that? Well, all of those things were pushing us in that technology age of the internet and having the iPhones and iPads and iPods and stuff like that at the palm of our hands. And we're wondering if we could streamline the business. And right away, I realized that Microsoft Access was not going to be able to do all those things because of how limited it was as far as being mobile and on the web, and then uploading files for sharing and stuff like that. That's why we gravitated towards Filemaker Pro. I bought this book. Actually, I think my parents actually bought it for me right before we went on family vacation. I read it most of that vacation, came home, dabbled in Filemaker, and it took me probably a year between being in high school and also working in the family business and working on my own businesses. So it was more of a hobby in the beginning. This book was totally great. It pretty much, I mean, I wouldn't say it's obsolete now, but there are newer versions like we'll get to at the bottom there, Filemaker Pro 19, learn Filemaker Pro 19. So this is where I started though, guys. This is a really good book. And I really enjoyed it. It laid the foundation for me getting into Filemaker. The next book we have here is one of my favorite books of all time. I really don't know when I read the book, to be honest. I would have to say that it was around the same time as the Filemaker book, around probably 2013, 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And this book's about the starting days of Apple and how Steve Wozniak would hack things and dabble in things, and how he got to building the personal computer. And it's a lot of stepping stones as far as like it. Everything in life starts out somewhere, and it also always starts at the bottom. And you gotta lay the foundation as far as like, okay, what's a resistor? What is a microcontroller? What's an LED? What's a capacitor? And Steve Wozniak lays it out pretty well in this book as far as how he got through the stages of his life to be able to build a personal computer. He just didn't build a personal computer. There's building blocks to that. There's building blocks to gaining the knowledge of how components work and how schematics work and how advancements in technology work, so you can prepare for what's to come to then build something new. So this book is more so about that foundational success, as far as like, it's not overnight. It takes a lot of time and learning from the early stages of building something. And the personal computer was definitely not built overnight. It was built over Steve Wozniak's lifetime of success in hacking stuff, building calculators at HP, and also building hacked versions for phones and hacking the phone lines with Steve Jobs. So this was a really cool book as well, as far as the storyline on how Steve Wozniak learned how to build things. The next book is probably one of the coolest books as far as getting the inside look into Apple's design process. It's probably one of the most current books to date as far as the process at which what Apple does and how things are built there and how you solve issues and problems and so forth. This book is really cool because it talks about the guy that worked next to Steve Jobs as far as presenting things to him as far as what he made. And in the beginning of the book, they talk about how they worked on Safari and bringing Safari to the Mac, and then bringing Safari to the iPad and iPhone, and how a lot of those technologies were built on open source platform. The open source platform meaning that it's available to everyone, and everyone's able to contribute to the open source code and build their own version of it on top of it. And then it gets into how he was transferred from kind of that division and how he slowly made his way into designing keyboards. And the biggest challenge with Apple's iPhone launch was that they couldn't master the keyboard yet. No one had mastered how to build a touchscreen keyboard on such a small device. They had to go through hundreds of iterations as far as the typing speed, the keyboard layout, button layout, how many types you pressed. The original design was around the iPod click wheel, and eventually what happened was this guy, he was originally building keyboards for the iPad because the iPad was actually going to be coming out before the iPhone, but Steve Jobs paused that job and he was dedicated to the iPhone, how this was going to impact more people in a larger amount in a short amount of time with the iPhone. So they talk about how demoing the keyboard to Steve Jobs and demoing it to the project managers at Apple as far as being on the keyboard team and the iOS team and so forth as far as that. And this book pretty much lays the foundation that you will never, ever, ever get it right the first time. It talks about how you have to go through many iterations until you get to a successful product and a successful application and workflow process. It talks about how there were so many keyboards made by many different designers and developers, but they all sucked until this guy Ken did something totally revolutionary as far as how he built the keyboard. It was a keyboard that looked just like all the other keyboards before it, but it was working so much more accurately that you actually had the chance of typing something versus just giving up on it. And in the book, they talk about what he did differently as far as how to build the keyboard, which was the keys on the keyboard. The physical key to the I looks the same, but what he did was he used a lot of artificial intelligence / algorithms that would detect the next most common word that you would potentially be typing. So if you typed the letter T, they had the percentage at which how likely are you gonna push the H button next on the keyboard, because the most common word based off of texting and instant messaging is the. So the hit region for the T on the keyboard would stay the same size visually to your eye. You would hit T, but then the hit region for the H would increase in size, because that would be the next most common word in the dictionary for instant messaging and typing and stuff like that. So the H would get bigger, so you would hit the H. And then once you hit the H, then definitely the E would get even more bigger, because the likelihood of you typing, hitting the E is more likely because of the word the. So, that's just one overview as far as like how they came to, building process, as far as going from Safari to many different channels in Apple, and how he landed at building the keyboard, and how he went and overcome all those challenges as far as thinking outside the box to fix these issues, and how we probably wouldn't have the iPhones today without this guy building such a great keyboard, because the iPhone was not going to ship unless the keyboard was 100% perfect. So there's a lot of cool techniques as far as encoding, and how you kind of want to just build the foundation and then worry about the things that are going to break later. A lot of people, when you're programming, they want to try to make it right the first time, and to be honest, you just can't do that. You gotta build, and then once you get to a tipping point, then you test. And typically what he did in his code was that he would know things would break based off of how he was writing the code, and he would do comments that were called fix me's. And what he would do is that he would write something and he knew it was sloppy, but he didn't care about the sloppiness yet. He just wants the function. He wants to see what it can potentially be. So he would do these fix me's. And then once he got to a certain threshold, he would go through all of his fix me's and make it better. And he did this iteration after iteration after iteration. You'll always have those fix me's in your code. And in FileMaker, it's a lot easier to program and figure out the workflows for things. But like I said, there's always room for improvement, and there's always room to clean things up. So I highly recommend this book if you really want to know more of the process as far as how they built the iPhone keyboard, how he went through Safari for the iPad, iPhone, and Mac, and the open source platform, and how this agile world we're going in with FileMaker, we're going to see more of that. We're going to see more of that open source, here you go, use this, build on top of it type of mentality. The next book is Steve Jobs. This is not so much a programming book, but it's around the technology. It's around how do you build good products? How do you have that vision to build something? This book is really related to iWoz as far as similarity in the stories, because their stories actually match up pretty well. When I was reading this book, as far as the relationship between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, the stories were almost identical. The small stories as far as creating the personal computer, and also doing work on the phone hacking, as far as how they use hacking on the payphones and stuff like that. The Steve Jobs books really goes in depth as far as how he built Apple, how he saw products, how he saw employees, and how he was able to get people to present their personal best and get the things done that they needed to get done within Apple, as far as between hardware and software. And he did that very well. And I really think it's a really good book to read as far as building good products and building good software, especially considering us developers in FileMaker. We are constantly working with a lot of different companies and a lot of different problems to solve. So being able to bring everyone together on a team to solve one big problem or many small problems within an organization it's really important to know how someone does that. And if you can figure out just 1% of that knowledge, then you can 10x your business within programming and sales and so forth. So that's another book I highly recommend as well. And then the most current book is Learn Filemaker Pro. This is the most current up-to-date book on Filemaker 19. It's a really good read. It's simple as far as the techniques this developer uses in his technique as far as developing in Filemaker. The pages are great. It's really well organized as far as delivering key concepts as far as how you can structure your database, as far as like structuring your tables and your tables names and naming conventions and field names and stuff like that. I haven't read everything in this book, but it's nice to have the reference. I mean, a lot of the programming now, once you know something in programming, you kind of just stick with that until you get stuck or you want some more inspiration. That's kind of why I bought this book. One thing that I have taken from this book is more of my naming conventions and how this author, Mark, he actually does something pretty interesting on his tables. And I don't know if I like it just yet, but if you have a table called like contacts, what he does is that every single field within the contacts table, he starts out all of those field names with contacts. So it's contacts underscore and then whatever the contents of that field is. So it's like contacts first name, contacts last name, contacts email, contacts address, contacts, etc. So you know that the contacts field is in the contacts table. So it's a little different. The reason why I'm not sure if I like it just yet, because I have been implementing it in a lot of my databases lately, is because when you're typing a script, you have to type contacts twice. I mean, you're doing contacts and then contacts first name, and it doesn't always register really quickly. Or if you're in the table database, like file manage database, and you go to the fields within a table and you want to go edit a field, like a global field, if you don't have the small g in front of contacts, then typing G, it ain't going to register where that field is. They're just small things, but there's really cool techniques in the book, and I really highly recommend, if you've never learned FileMaker, and you don't know what FileMaker is, this is a good read. This is probably the best book you can buy right now on the shelf to learn FileMaker Pro start to finish. So those are the books, guys. I got FileMaker Pro, Learn FileMaker Pro 19. I got Steve Jobs, iWoz, Creative Selection, and also FileMaker Pro 19. I'm sorry, FileMaker Pro 14. These are all the books that I really highly recommend if you want to be a really good developer, not only in FileMaker, but in designing software, being a project manager on a team. There's a lot of good books out there, and these are the ones that I have read and have made a big impact on my life. So I hope you guys liked the video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please destroy the like button. It really helps the channel out. Please subscribe so that I get my subscription numbers up to take this channel to the next level. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and see you next time. Peace.